recommend that you YouTube it.
Oh, yeah.
But you're going to see
probably
people
will.
throw like 12 different ways.
Okay.
And so
Alright.
the way that we teach people, like their intro to the wheel and
Okay.
to working with clay, is a certain very specific process.
Okay.
But there's no fundamental rules.
Okay.
It's a matter of learning how to work with the centrifugal speed,
Right.
the direction of the wheel, and the kinetic process. It's a
Okay.
game of leverage
Okay.
and a game of attention.
Okay. So you start with the chunk, literally.
Literally a chunk.
Okay.
Yep. So I'm just going to squish it down onto the wheel or give it a firm tap. We tend to tell people, think of your sibling.
Yep.
I'm the youngest of four, so
Okay.
that translates for me.
Yes.
All right. My right foot was pushing on the brake to start the wheel. So I'm just, we want to get it moving medium fast because we
Okay.
want the centrifugal speed to work for us.
Okay.
There are forces involved here. I'm going to get the clay wet, get my hands wet.
Okay.
I'm going to use the heel of my left hand to push forward at about the 7 o'clock. I'm
Okay.
going to set a boundary with these fingers over here on
Okay.
all the way down on the back. You can kind of see the ring.
Uh-huh.
My right hand is going to make a cup, and I'm going to press down
Okay.
with this little section of my fingers, and this
Okay.
wrist is going to come in. So there's 4 points of pressure.
Got it.
The centrifugal speed needs to be pretty quick in order
Okay.
to transfer all of the pressure that I'm applying.
Okay. And that
Across
might be
the
something I
entire ball.
seriously struggle with the manual wheel.
And the longer your hand is in contact with the clay, you can see parts of it are shiny and you can
Uh-huh.
see part of it is dull.
Right.
The longer your hand stays in contact with the clay, you pull away the water, and the water is also being absorbed by the clay. So
Okay.
you can see now it's getting more and more matte.
Right.
It's getting more and more sticky.
Okay.
So the longer, if I were to just stay in contact with the clay, it's literally going to try to come apart in my hands.
Okay.
See, it's starting to build
Right.
up. And so if the kids just struggle like this
Yeah.
and they lift their weight up, they're
Okay.
going to be following the clay around.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah, I have seen it. So what you're already seeing that I'm doing instinctively out of practice is I'm anchoring my weight, I'm
Yeah.
tightening my elbows, and I'm leaning.
You're kind of leaning
into
on
my
your
arms.
legs.
Yep.
Yeah. That's why I was wondering why the benches are usually even.
Slanted, right?
Well, they're. I'm surprised I'm surprised the wheel's not up higher. It didn't make sense to me, but this makes sense to me now.
So you want it, and actually later on, now we've centered the clay, now we're ready to cone and center. So
Okay.
you add some water.
Okay.
We make what we call a prayer position.
Okay.
Fingertips together, your thumb tips together and high.
Okay.
You keep your hands straight like a karate chop. You don't want there to be any oscillation in your wrists.
Okay.
Straight up and down. I'm going to let the sides of my hands drift on the plastic. You notice I cleaned it off.
Uh-huh.
So otherwise that grit, that'll exfoliate you.
Yeah. I was gonna say you get a good exfoliation if you don't.
Yes.
Not
So I'm
careful.
actually leaning into my wrist to push
Okay.
down. And I'm going to squeeze the heels of my hands together and
Okay.
drift up slightly.
Alright.
So
Now
I
we
have this little,
turn into a cup.
yeah. So here's the shoulder over here. I'm going to use the center of my left hand
Okay.
because of the direction it's rotating. And I'm going to push forward through the clay until it
Oh.
rounds.
Oh, okay.
And it's a little off center because I was being very tentative. So I'm pushing down, squeezing up, easing
So
off.
could you just leave it like that and finish it, or are these just different shapes you want?
What we're doing is conditioning the clay. We're introducing
Okay.
water. So we're squeezing from the very, very bottom to get the clay from the center to rise up.
Okay.
And then when I add water, I'm pushing all of that clay outward.
So this is something you do no matter what you were
Yes.
producing.
Mm-hmm.
Just to get the clay like fermented with water, maybe?
Yes.
Okay.
The entire ball of clay, not just the exterior.
Okay.
We're hydrating the clay, we're evening the clay. If there were any air bubbles, they would come to the surface. And now I'm
Okay.
ready to open up. That's the
Okay.
third stage. I'm just going to scrape the excess slip off, get my
Okay.
clay wet, wrap my right hand around the clay first, then
Okay.
overlap with my left,
Okay.
touch my thumbs in the center, bend at the knuckle
Okay.
until my until my knuckles touch. I'm applying pressure
Okay.
all the way from the tips of my thumbs. You can see they're going white a little bit.
Right.
And I'm going to push in just a little ways. I'm going to create a
Okay.
little divot.
Okay.
I'm going to fill that with water, and you can use the sponge. And now I have the moisture I need to push into the clay. And then I can double check to see how far down I've gone.
Oh, wow.
So I'm going to
Okay.
stop my wheel, and there's a way to know for sure. I'm going to use a needle tool and poke straight in.
Okay.
Put my finger down. Notice I'm holding my hand over the top of it, not holding it like a pen.
Yes.
Going straight down until my fingertip touches the floor.
Okay.
Straight out, that's the depth of my floor.
Okay. Is that what you want?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
So I'm going to get back to the same speed. This all happens at the same speed.
Okay.
So I'm going to fill that up. Get rid of the hole I poked in the bottom. I'm going to put a little bit of a groove so you can kind of see on the interior of the wall. Can you see how it curves inward a little bit?
Yes.
That gives me a groove for my fingers. I'm going to put
Okay.
my fingers, the middle finger of my left hand and my ring finger.
Okay.
I'm going to overlap with my right fingers.
Okay.
And just, I'm not hinging at my wrist because that'll dig down into the floor.
Okay.
I'm going to use my elbows to drag my hands closer to my tummy.
Okay.
Get wet. So you'll see my elbows drift a little bit. And I'm concentrating on keeping my fingertip in a smooth, level path.
Okay.
There we go. Just slowly relax, release the clay. Now I actually traveled upward as I went, so I'm going to grab that clay again and push it toward the wall.
Okay.
And then from the wall, I'll go back toward the center and compress and smooth that floor and double check. It's still a little bit lower in the center, so I'm going to go back to the wall, pushing that excess clay toward the wall, and then from the wall, go back to the center and double check that that floor is very smooth and level.
Okay.
And that getting it level takes some skill and requires some practice.
Okay.
If the clay is uneven in the floor, the clay contracts as it dries.
Okay.
And the thinner clay will dry faster, and
Right.
the thicker clay will dry slower. And where there is still moisture, the thinner clay will pull the thicker clay apart,
Okay.
and you'll get cracks. They're called S cracks going through.
Okay, and I've
All
heard,
in
I'm
the rings.
terrified of air bubbles in the kiln. Everybody's told me that's going
Yeah.
to make everything explode. And I'm like, well, how do you avoid air bubbles with children?
Okay, here's what's important to know. Air bubbles do not make anything explode.
Okay.
Moisture,
Okay.
trapped moisture
Got it.
from thick walls and the clay hasn't dried out well enough.
Okay.
That's what makes things explode.
Got it.
I've loaded them
Yeah.
hundreds, if not thousands of kilns. And it's never, and I've had air bubbles in my own work,
Okay.
and they end up looking like little warts,
Yeah.
which are very sad.
Yes. Now you're going a little bit slower.
Yes, quite a bit slower. And now I'm ready to pull. So I'm gonna make sure that my walls are wet. I don't need my hands to be wet or dirty right now.
Okay.
So I'm actually gonna clean all that clay off my hands
Okay.
because it's gonna dry. My hands are gonna go.
Okay.
So I'm just using just a sip of water. You don't wanna flood it. You don't wanna puddle in here.
Right.
That will weaken your clay. So there's a particular hand motion. Notice how my right hand is creating a splint around my left thumb.
Okay.
My ring finger goes under the knuckle,
Uh-huh.
my index finger goes at the cuticle line, and my index finger goes on top.
Okay.
And the heel of my right wrist is going to be in line with my sternum.
Okay.
It's going to tip down and let my left thumb, the side of my left thumb, touch the plastic. If you can
Okay.
see that red ring happening,
Yeah.
I'm going to use my right hand to push the tip of the bone of my thumb into the clay until I get a groove, and then travel upward through the thickness of the floor. Now I'm going to ease off, and I'm going to press from the interior. I'm using my my middle finger to push the clay out toward my thumb.
Okay.
I'm going to ease off for a moment and add some more water.
How do you know when to add water?
You'll feel it get sticky, tacky,
Oh,
sticky
okay.
under your fingers. It starts to like drag.
Okay.
So now I'm going to compress that little edge. I'm going to lose that little bit of clay. Anytime water gets in between a ridge of clay,
Okay.
it just comes off. It's not
Okay.
the end of the world. All right, so now I've pushed outward. I've collected that pressure. You can see that groove. And now I'm maintaining the distance, but the complexity is involved in the fact that the clay is softer toward the top than it is at the bottom.
Okay.
So maintaining the distance requires less pressure from your fingertips as you get higher
Okay.
than it does at the very bottom. So I'm going to maintain the width with my fingertips
Okay.
and compress downward with the sponge to round and compress the clay. Because every time we add water, we add it from the very, very top.
Okay.
So now I'm ready to pull again. So get my hands in position,
Okay.
go to the very bottom, press my fingers, my thumb into the clay, push that groove up, ease off a little bit. See, there's a little bit of space.
Right.
Right where the floor and the wall meet, I'm pressing the clay with my middle finger toward the thumb. And now I've got a little groove, and I'm using the pressure between my two fingers. The clay will reorganize.
Okay.
And I'm holding steady at the top. I've eased off on the pressure. I'm just maintaining the width to stabilize the rim and then open.
That's beautiful. You do it so well. Make it look effortless. I know I could do it and look like a big ball.
Kind of like a skier, when they've learned how to work with the gravity of the hill and learned how to maneuver their body. This is very similar.
Okay.
This is also similar to the process of learning how to drive, where you're making 200 decisions a minute.
Okay.
And all your concentration just goes on using the gas pedal and the brake and keeping your car between the white lines.
Right.
So much concentration. How far my hand can reach down with one hand.
Okay.
So now I'm ready
you can make it, well,
with the length of my hand.
Okay, got it.
And if their hands are shorter, then they'll only be able to go shorter.
Right.
And now I'm going to change the technique that I'm going to use with my hands. I can start by putting my thumb against the knuckle of my middle finger in my right hand.
Okay.
I'm going to curl my fingers and just tap my middle fingers. And now I know where they are in space, even as they're moving around. And I'm going to shift my focus to being about here on the wheel.
Okay.
I'm at the, what's that for, 5 o'clock?
Okay.
So now my outside hand becomes what does the job of my thumb, where I'm pressing in, pushing up, pinching out with the inside hand. And now, it got a little dry right there. If you can see the groove following on the outside and the inside. And I'm slowly angling upward, stabilizing the rim, and then slowly releasing the clay. Now, if this is going to be a bowl, I'm ready to add the volume. The unit of standard unit of measurement for most things in pottery is the thickness of the handle of your needle tool.
Okay.
So once your clay is roughly the thickness of the handle of your needle tool, you know that's as thin as you want your clay to be.
Okay.
I'm going to belly it out, and as it gets wider, that will make it thinner.
Okay.
So if you can tell, like, I left a little bit of extra thickness there. Can you see?
Yeah.
So now I'm going to use my sponge. See how it's curved?
Right.
And I'm going to just bring it right here at my 6 o'clock.
Okay.
And I'm slowly, slowly, slowly pulling towards myself.
Okay.
Just angling it towards myself to open
What are
my
your hands
clay
doing
up.
on the other side?
I'm just supporting it there. If it starts to wobble, I'm not actually touching the clay.
Okay.
I am touching my hand so that I have a point of reference so I'm stable.
Got it.
It's getting thin.
Okay, so the thinner it gets, you're slowing it down.
You see how we have this little curve right there?
Yes.
That's called the beginner's hump.
Okay.
Because they tend to leave that there. So I'm going to use my middle finger and slowly, slowly angle outward. Turn this into a bowl. So the outside hand is just drifting.
Okay.
My thumbs are connected for support.
Okay.
There we go. What we have here is a beautiful little rice ball.
Yeah, it's nice.
And for the last time, I'm going to just support the edge and press down to compress that rim so that if somebody drops their spoon, they don't break the rim.
Right. Is that a silicone mat it's sitting on? What kind of a?
No. That would be soft. We want them to be hard. So these are hard plastic squares that have a grid underneath.
Okay.
And you can get round ones, you can get square ones.
Okay.
We just happen to use the square for some reason.
So that's done.
That's throwing.
And okay, that's throwing.
But so what would need to happen from here is, pardon me, I'm going to go get a wire tool.
Okay.
Because it's very fragile right now. It's very soft. So I'm holding the wire
cutting tool
between my pinkies.
Okay.
And then making it taut between these two fingers. I bring it up and over. It's really easy if you're not paying attention to cut through your wall.
Right.
You want to go up and over your pot.
Okay.
And then use your thumbs to find an edge.
Okay.
And I'm pressing with my pinkies to keep the wire tight or taut, if you're familiar with that word.
Yes.
And pulling it, keeping my fingertips in contact. You can see the stroke of my fingertip.
Yeah.
If you let one finger lift up, you're going to cut into your wall.
Yeah.
And if you have a ton of debris, like if you've waited till this was dry and this was super dirty, then you're going to be having an uneven surface. Okay. So I recommend
you're basically pressing down and scraping just to detach it from
it? But you want this to be clean before you. It is what's called a firm leather hard.
Okay.
And I can show you a piece over here that someone else has started to allow to dry.
Okay.
You can see the difference in the color.
Oh, yeah.
It's a much darker gray.
Sure.
And their piece is dried enough to where you can literally just be lifted off the board. They didn't even need to wire it, though I would recommend it. So you can see this is more of a student's work, where it's more uneven.
Yeah.
And the walls are a little bit more just
Right.
unsure. And the floor is not quite even.
Right.
So at this point, they would need to attach it to, like, clean this off completely, attach this to a bat, and then use tools to trim away
Okay. So
all
just,
of the excess material.
okay.
And that's dependent on how thick their floor is.
Right.
Trimming is a whole process.
Okay.
This isn't my piece, so I
Okay.
can't show
Yeah.
you this
Got
one.
it.
I did